All right, folks, welcome back into another episode of the Mancast. Ed and Chad coming right back at you again for another healthy episode. This time, I use the word healthy because we're going to be a little less frustrated
Or
and a little
serious.
more, yeah. We're going to use a little more humor as a means of catharsis rather than anger because it's not very cathartic. Actually, it just seems to make it worse. So. Today, we are going to touch on some of the latest occurrences you can find in the news, a little current events wrap up of the week. So, with that, I will toss it over to Ed and see what he would like to start with. Ed, go for
All
it.
right. Well, first I'll add on to what you said. You're right. There's no catharsis in anger all the time, and we live in a very angry and troubled world right now. So it's easy to get frustrated and get ginned up. And this is not going to be our show this week. This week, I'm going to start off by talking about my favorite guy, Dylan the Dude Mulhaney, the Bud Light guy. Now, there's a couple things that need to be said right off the top. I'm a little disappointed again in our society that we are treating a man as if he's actually a woman, and we're celebrating the fact that this 20, I think he's 25 or 26, has been a man for has been a woman for a whole solid year, Chad. And so he now fully understands the whole female experience, especially since he can give birth apparently now and can have his period. So he clearly knows what it's like to be a woman, probably better than even women do. That's why he's getting this great honor bestowed upon him by Anheuser, not to ever be mentioned again, Bush. And what I find ironic about this whole thing is, Mother Teresa was a woman for probably over 30,000 days, and she never got her face put on a beer can. My mother's been a woman for over 24,000 days, and neither has she. So I think it's a little insulting. And frankly, I think all women should be completely insulted by this at this particular point, that men keep getting these accolades for being the bravest women in the world because they're dudes. The whole thing is so absurd that all you can do is actually laugh at it. And by the way, Nike now, on top of Bud Light being the stupidest fucking piece of shit corporation on earth, Nike said, hold our beer, pun intended, and decided to make Dylan Mulvaney the actual spokesmodel for their new sports bras when Dylan, who never even changed his name from his real name, he's still using his dude name, Dylan, the boy Mulhaney, is actually doesn't have breasts at all and isn't even trying to get them. So how a sports bra actually helps him out, I'm not exactly sure. But Martina Navratilova had the audacity to say this is stupid, and of course the woke culture completely pounced on one of the greatest tennis players that's ever lived, who's actually done more good in this world than every woke piece of shit in this country will ever do combined. And now she is a Nazi because she had the audacity to say this is stupid.
Well, as usual, folks, we are amateur comedians, and everything we say and discuss on this show is all parody and meant to be
Of course.
taken as jokes. So if you decide you want to be litigious, I mean, we're just joking around. So anyway, alleged, whatever. Just kidding. Dylan Mulvaney, yeah, that's a dude, and it's worse than that. He's a grifter. He's an obvious grifter, and worse than that, most of his followers are kids.
Right. He's not
Out of
even
the
a
12
woman. And
million followers.
I mean, obviously he's not a woman. But on top of that, if you ever really watched any of his videos, he's doing a parody of what he thinks a woman is. Almost like
100%.
almost like a comedic act. And frankly,
It is. It's a character. He's
it
doing
is.
a character.
He's absolutely doing a character like RuPaul.
Well,
Except
he
for me,
was.
but RuPaul's at least upfront about the fact that he's a drag queen and he's doing a character in his everyday life. He is, I can't remember his real name, but that's who he is in everyday life. This clown here, he's a joke, man.
Mulvaney was a thespian, was doing theater, worked in the theater, was actually traveling around doing this musical called The Book of Mormon. And then I quote this when this was the dude Dylan Mulvaney all of a sudden the pandemic happened and he got this bright idea. And I quote, "When the pandemic hit, I was doing the Broadway musical Book of Mormon. I found myself jobless and without a creative means to do what I loved. I downloaded TikTok, assuming it was a kid's app. Once I came out as a woman and I made, quote, day one of being a girl comedic video. So this character, comedic caricature, I blew up. I really don't know any other place like TikTok where a creator can grow as fast as I did. So basically, stuck the finger in the water of the zeitgeist and said, all right, I have a great idea for a character, launched it, it blew the freak up, and now he's reaping the rewards. He's already been to the White House, and like you said, Nike's got this dude wearing training bras, and now his face is on a Bud Light can. So as far as Bud Light's concerned, Bud Light, I mean, I'm not gonna boycott anyway over any of this, but I wasn't gonna drink Bud Light anyway because it's shit beer. But I do have to make one point about Kid Rock. So I feel like what Dylan Mulvaney is doing is a grift. What Bud Light is doing is an obvious grift. It's what all these corporations do is they pander to the woke BS because that means they don't have to actually change anything about the way they operate, and that they can continue to be whatever they are. And so they just pay a little lip service to the woke crew, and then they hope that they'll leave them alone. They won't throw bricks through their windows. Um, so that's a grift, but also the Kid Rock thing. I'm sorry, when you make a response video to something like this and you're shooting cans, like you're just doing that for your own attention, Kid Rock. We all know that.
Sure.
But so he caught a bunch of flack, rightfully so. You put yourself out there like that. But some of the flack I don't agree is even like well aimed though, because they're going on about how Coors Light. They're like, oh, because Kid Rock drinks Coors Light. They're like, oh, because here's a Coors Light ad where they have like a rainbow under the cap, and it's like Happy Bastille Day, and they're just talking about how as a company Coors has been very they've supported, always been very supportive of same-sex marriage and stuff like that. But here's my issue: they're conflating same-sex marriage with Dylan Mulvaney pretending to be something he's not, and everybody else is supposed to pretend along. Like that's not the same thing as gays having the right to be married. Like nobody cares about that, and to conflate those two, to me, that's the most homophobic thing you can do. And so you're trying to call me homophobic because I don't agree that I should have to call the obvious dude a woman because he's shoving it down my throat. And again, what I said last week, if you're a nice person, you don't have an agenda, and you don't demand respect from me, I'm probably just going to, out of the kindness of my heart, call you whatever you want and treat you how you want to be treated because you're treating me the way I want to be treated. But Dylan Mulvaney, Bud Light, all of these characters, they're not. They're shoving this shit down people's throat, and it has gone too far, and people are finally starting to push back.
I agree with that take. Obviously, people are starting to push back because they've had enough. It's become absurdly ridiculous. The video that Mulvaney put out, where he feigned that he didn't even know what sport March Madness is. He doesn't understand anything about sports. This is a 25, 26-year-old man who knows full damn well that March Madness is basketball. People don't know a damn thing about basketball, know that March Madness is about college basketball. So, because again, he's doing a parody of what he thinks a woman would do in that situation, not actually what he as a human being would do. And here is my rub about all this transgenderism. Is that almost every transgendered person that I have seen in interview or on TV or anywhere else, or even in secular life, right, just walking around and running into them, my observations are, regardless of which side, woman to man, man to woman, they're all doing a parody of what they think the other person is supposed to be, and none of them are authentic or acting like themselves. They're being what they think they're supposed to be, if that's the gender they actually were, as opposed to the person that they are. If you're truly transgender, if you truly believe that, then all you could possibly be is yourself, because that's who you're claiming you are. So if you're faking or doing a parody of a woman, if you're a guy who's transgendering to a woman, then clearly you're not really transgender. You're just playing a part.
If you just grow your hair long, put on a dress, and get fake tits, all you're saying is that what it means to be a woman are those few things, and that's just asinine.
Right.
And another thing I want to say is that I fundamentally want to touch on here is that I don't know if you've seen the what's her name, Riley. Gosh,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That the
the swimmer.
swimmer that lost out on being an All American because of
Mm-hmm.
Leah Thomas.
Yeah, Riley Gaines, and so she was doing a talk. Who, by the way, Riley Gaines is not a vitriolic person. She's not a political ideologue. She's very like sweethearted about what she's saying, but she is standing up for the fact that what she thinks is true, and I believe is true as well. Is it's not fair that biological males are entering into these women's athletic spaces. So Riley Gaines was down in San Diego giving a talk somewhere in Southern California the past few days, and after the talk, she got mobbed by this angry mob of trans activists. And here's what I
San
wanted to
Francisco
say.
State.
That's what it was, San Fran. They kept screaming. The chant they were shouting was, trans women are women. Trans women are women. And so my very first question is then why are you specifying that they're trans women? Wouldn't it just be women are women? The very fact that you have to say trans women identifies the fact that that's not a woman. It's another thing. It's obviously another thing. Oh, and we can all see that, by the way.
And
So
then
you can repeat this stupid mantra as much as you want, but I'm not that easily hypnotized. And whatever, shut up. You know?
Okay, and this is how these things have become not just ridiculous on their face, but hyperbolic and dangerous. Is that she got sucker punched by a man dressed as a woman,
Yeah, and the police wouldn't even do anything.
and they won't arrest him, even though they have
Yeah.
it on film.
Yeah, yeah.
How is that?
'Cause-
This woman got assaulted by a genetic man who, had he been in a better position and there wasn't anybody around her protecting her, if he would have got a clean shot at her, would have put her lights out and would have put her in the hospital.
and
Period.
that should be a hate crime because if it were the other way around, it certainly would be.
You're damn right.
It would
And
also
by the
be.
way, another thing that nobody talks about when this Leah Thompson comes up, so I want to be clear on Leah Thompson. Leah Thompson was on Pennsylvania University. It's not Pennsylvania State University, Pennsylvania University. It's an Ivy League school. He spent 3 years on the varsity swimming team as a male. He was ranked 328th in the world, and he sucked. So he switched to the girls' team and then blew all their records right out of the water. And this Riley, she tied with him in an event, and they gave him the trophy simply based on the fact that he was transgendered and she wasn't. So he automatically got it. They pulled her aside and said, yeah, he wins, you come in second. And that was a dead heat. And they never, why? Because we need to be woke because we're an Ivy League school and, you're barely above community college in Arizona. So you don't really count. We're Penn. So we're going to be totally woke and you're going to have to eat shit and there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, it's getting more and more violent, and like I don't see it going the other way. It's funny that like we could fight a civil war over gender. It's like you would think that if we were going to have another civil war, it would have been race based. It's like, oh, race based civil wars are so 19th century. Now we do it over your fucking junk, you know? Like, how do you identify?
For the woke people, I want to be clear that Chad said the 19th century, and since you're woke, you're not real smart. That means the 1800s.
So yeah, like, but here's another interesting thing about that. This is historically what happens to all major, empires and massive, thriving, opulent societies is that as they start to meet their decline, all this gender fluidity and androgyny and all this very sexuality sort of
Pedophilia.
focused stuff. Yes, pedophilia gets on the rise. You see that, and you see, this dramatic shift from masculine to more effeminate males to softer. Like if you look at the artwork in ancient Rome, ancient Greece, and you watch as you get closer and closer to the decline, the sculptors are sculpting people accurately, and they're going from like these very chiseled men to these very like doughy guys who like have a little boy next to them,
Well,
right? So and they're and so anyway, I feel like we're going down the road to
oh yeah.
societal collapse, and it isn't because of the gender stuff. The gender stuff is a marker of a society in decline.
Oh, I agree, and I think, and I don't know how far down we want to go down this road today, but um, transgenderism. So there was a very involved long-term study done by German and Swiss scientists through their universities, Berlin and Stockholm, and they studied for almost two generations as they started the study in the 1980s, children and transgenderism. And the conclusion that they came to was that well over 50% of all of these kids were autistic. And one of the conclusions they were coming to is that autistic kids, um, they can be very focused on singular things. So if they are told by the few people that they communicate with that you're not a boy anymore, now you're a girl, that they hang on to that and they dig in hard. Like they would with anything else, because that's part of being autistic. And so this isn't an accident that all this is happening, and this is why, and we've discussed this before. This is why our medical community should be ashamed of themselves. Our politicians have no shame, so I'm not even going to bother with that one. But us as a society to pretend that these things are okay, it's not okay. And if you are listening to me and you think that this is okay, the mutilation and harming children psychologically is an okay thing, please never speak to me again, ever, under any circumstances, for any reason, because I don't want to be your friend, because you're a monster by my definition. And then I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I'll just say my last piece on it. We're Ed and I have been very close friends with plenty of gay people. Totally support gay marriage. Totally support even to be for an adult person to do whatever surgeries and altering to their bodies and their chemistry, whatever. It's your right as an adult, but it's not your right as an adult to do some sort of an life altering thing to a young person, to a person who can't even consent to having sex, and you're going to change their sex. No, 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 no. Because we know for a fact that a large subset of kids go through gender crises and gender questioning and things like that. We have the tomboys, we have the more effeminate males, and many of them have go through this short period where they think they are in the wrong body and stuff like that. But if you leave them alone and you let them be kids, they actually just grow up to be an adult who's either gay or just on a different end of the spectrum of a straight person. By the way, I also believe there are legitimately trans like people who were caught between um, what's the new word for hermaphrodite? Intersex. They're somewhere in the intersex thing where like they have a more prominent one genitalia over the other, and but their chemistry is off. I think that anomaly does exist, but the fact that there is like a tenfold increase in that obvious anomaly, it's no longer an anomaly anymore, and that's because it's caught fire as this trend, and that's dangerous. That's what I've been saying. We're looking at the end of societal decline unless we're somehow able to push back and like recorrect. And I don't know if I'm that white pill. So with that, what do you want to talk about next, boss?
Well, I want to talk about the hardcore career, now charged with 34 felonies, that total piece of garbage, Donald Trump, who now clearly is probably the most dangerous human being that has ever lived, because he broke absolutely no laws at all.
It is the most flimsy, ridiculous case I've ever looked into. Um, I mean, just a little more backstory. Not that I'm an attorney or I'm an expert in law, but I studied criminology for 10 years, and I taught a law class at a a Research One college for a little while. I've taught criminal justice classes, social work classes, so forth. So, um, with that, I'll just say that I know a little bit about how the system works, and I'll just say this: any like any person, you don't have to be somebody who's studied as much as I have, or even a quarter. The average person, the average college freshman can look at this, and if they can set down their political ideology long enough, they can go, well, that doesn't make any sense, right?
But the whole thing to me here, look, I did not study criminology, but I've been studying logic and reason my whole life. And this is neither logical or reasonable in any way, shape, or form. The only way that you can buy into any of this is because you're a complete ideologue, and that's the only way. Trump is obviously guilty of nothing here. Even if they can, as a matter of fact, he's been charged with none of the crimes. All that he's being charged with, they're saying that to get the misdemeanor election, um, misuse of election funds law to a felony is to say the misuse of those funds created a felonious crime later, but they've never cited one because they don't have any. And you and I had spoken about this before, and you had made the good point, and I now agree that they want Trump to run, and they're doing this purposefully to get his base so ginned up that it guarantees him the Republican nomination so they can run against him in the election because they know that they'll be easily be able to defeat him in the election,
I think.
or steal it away. I think what they're not taking into consideration here, which is a miscalculation on their part, is that the last time he ran against Joe Biden, he ran against a ghost who was not there because of a pandemic, and he refused to leave his house or engage in any notable way. And so now he'll have a 4-year track record. And I can tell you, in my 50 plus years on this earth, no one is even close to as bad a president as Joe Biden. Jimmy Carter now looks George fucking Washington by comparison. That's how bad Biden actually is. So he's going to have to run on his record as president against Trump this time. And if you compare their two records and pull their personalities out of it, that's not even a close call. That is Muhammad Ali in his prime against my daughter Jamie when she was 5 years old. It's not even a close call.
Well, as far as the the indictment, there's so much wrong with it. I mean, the 34 counts is asinine. It's just like, you know, oh, he tore the check out of the check. The attorney tore the check out of the checkbook. There's a count. The attorney
Right.
signed the checkbook, the check. There's an account. He put it in the logbook. There's another count.
Yep.
He mailed the check away.
The
The only
account the accountant used it on the accounting books. There's another violation. It's
the
absurd.
the only crime that Trump committed was solicitation of prostitution, and I thought the left
Allegedly.
and I
Allegedly.
thought the left. Well, yeah, okay. So we don't
But
get
Stormy
sued. We'll say
Daniels has
allegedly,
said
but
herself that never happened. So
she's tried to backpedal and say that now, so she didn't have to come up with what she's doing now. She just got nailed on appeals, and she owes Trump $120,000 now. So she
oh
just lost,
no. She owes Trump 500 some $1,000
or that, or she just got another 120 slapped on her
added
because
to it. Yes.
yeah. So my point is, she was trying to backpedal, like, oh crap, I'm in trouble now that I opened my mouth, because she signed something and took the money, which is how that works. Like they settled out, they settled in private on the matter, and the people do that all the time. So to try and make this about campaign finance in order to elevate it to a felony is not just ridiculous, it doesn't work because it requires the federal government to actually come down and then find him guilty on that before this New York State charge can actually be elevated. So that would require the federal government to act. The federal government has already investigated this and called it a day. And so I don't think, to me, it's going to get thrown out. I don't think it goes further than maybe one more step before it gets tossed out. It's terrible, I don't even know how he thought it would go anywhere. Like, I guess you just throw the Hail
Well,
Mary out and hope.
Well,
I
it seemed
mean,
that Alvin Bragg was actually backing off all of this, and then
mm-hmm,
Soros and them started to apply pressure
right, Biden.
because he wasn't following through. Now, not only is this DA bought and paid for by George Soros, so is this judge in Manhattan also bought and paid for by George Soros. And so this judge, which for instance, there's the, the next the time they even go into court is discovery, uh, and he's already put down the edict that Trump must be there, almost a year away, right? So in December, they're going to do discovery and do motions. A defendant does not have to be there for motions. That never happens in a court of law. It's not necessary for him to be there. They're forcing this so that they can have another photo op going in to because January starts the official election season just a month later, and that's when the trial starts. They've delayed everything for a year already. And they're doing this on purpose because they want the optics of this whole thing. These guys, so this Manhattan judge is absolutely going to do this. However, uh, this will be appealed when this whole thing's going on. And then, of course, what's going to happen is it'll go to the state Supreme Court of New York, which would probably just throw this whole thing out because because the state of New York, you move away from New York City and it is a red state. And so a lot of the judges that are there are either Republican or conservative. So it'll probably but if it doesn't, it's going to go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will laugh at this. It'll be gone in a second.
I predict it doesn't even make it to the jury. It
I
gets
don't see
thrown
this
out.
man. I don't see how the Manhattan judge will have to throw it out. I
That's
can
what I'm saying.
see. I can see, however, them taking this out and keep it in the news, and then when it comes right down to it, um, just dropping the charges as they try to compile more evidence. They won't say that they're just going to drop the whole thing, and then if Trump pulls off a win, this DA will be able to revisit and do it whenever he wants, why he's president of the United States. If he were to get reelected, also right now, uh, Comer and for the FBI is getting hammered. I saw an interview with him that he is getting hammered by literally dozens and dozens and dozens of DAs throughout the country who now want to go after Bill Clinton and Obama and Hillary Clinton and all these people because, statutes of limitations don't matter anymore. All right, let's go. Let's do this. So that's the problem when you go down and you do this kind of, and this is also what third world banana republics do. We
Mm-hmm.
should be ashamed of ourselves as a society that the people of our society, us, me, you, people who are listening, our friends, family members who probably aren't listening because they have better things to do than listen to us because we're idiots. But as a society, everybody should be screaming, this is unacceptable. There is nothing here. This is banana republic shit. This is not the country that I want to live in. If they had something really legitimate to be going after, then I would support them. I don't know. Let's just say a president's son compromised uh, our security and made illegal deals with foreign adversaries and then brought his dad into it and then paid him hush money on it too. Now, if something like that happened, which obviously is ridiculous, but if something like that happened, I don't know, let's just make up a name. We'll call them the Bidens. And then you went after them and you wanted to prosecute them. That makes sense to me because that's treasonous, right? And by the way, it's illegal on so many fronts. I don't need to sit here and enumerate them. It's fraud, it's deception, it's corruption, it is treasonous to the United States of America. We're not just talking about felonies that'll put you in jail for a while. We're talking about an offense that can have you hung by your neck until you're dead. Which would be the outcome you'd be looking for.
Can we
So,
line all the politicians up, please?
so how anybody could take this against Trump, and I've said this on our last podcast, Mancast. casty cast. I said that what really pisses me off about Democrats is they make me defend and like Trump because that's how ridiculous they're being. If you can't beat the man head on, shame on you. And that's what really has them pissed off at the end of the day. They lose to Trump over and over and over again, and they can't figure out why. Well, it's because you're doing it all wrong. Just beat him at the ballot box and you win, but that's not good enough for them. That the Democratic Party has become so ridiculously demented that if Donald Trump were to die today from a massive heart attack, they would still drag his family into court. They wouldn't let it go. They can't stop. It's become sycophantic at this point. They are obsessed. It is bizarre. It is beyond comprehension. And the people who are doing this, all of them are not fit to be in the office that they hold. That's what I mean by banana republic. So it's the Keystone Cops. The Three Stooges are running our country. That's what's going on here, and it's not going to stop. I can't imagine this ever stopping. My whole life, this has been slowly picking up steam, slowly picking up steam. It's become more and more absurd from administration to administration. It just gets crazier and crazier and crazier. The money that we spend, they just never ends. And this isn't going to stop. And it's only going to continue to go like this until there is an absolute uprising or a revolutionary war or civil war, or another country just simply, while our hands are worried about making sure that men can compete against women and ridiculous shit like that, what's going to happen is somebody else is going to take over, and they're going to do it, and they're going to do it while we're not looking. And by the time we do anything to try to stop it, it's going to be too late.
So, the next, speaking of it continuing on and not letting up, the next indictment, shoot a drop, is going to be the Georgia indictment on the election, supposed election interference, where he called the Fulton County district attorney and talked to him for an hour and basically said there was all these fraudulent things that took place. The voting machines were having problems all day.
The burst water pipe.
I'm 11,000 votes off, and there's this massive, in the biggest precinct, the biggest vote count place in the whole state, a water pipe magically bursts all of a sudden. Everybody supposedly has to evacuate. There wasn't, by the way, there was no water pipe like in where the ballots were, so why would they have to evacuate? The Republicans evacuate, so for some reason the Democrats stay behind, and so it looks fishy as fuck. And so he's like on the phone with the guy, and he is pushing him to like not go forth with certifying the election, and he's telling him that it could be problematic for him if he doesn't figure this out. And so they're going to construe it as he was trying to lean on him as from a position of power as the president to do something or face sort of legal action. Now that would be coercive and illegal. However, you have to prove intent. And Trump's intent was to fix a fraud that he assumed took place. Now you can say he didn't assume that and he's lying, but you'd have to be inside the man's head. And you can't prove that he's lying because he's always said that he thinks it was fixed. There's no recording where he goes, I've just been saying that to piss everybody off. So good luck proving his intent that he was actually trying to make the man do something fraudulent when it was very obvious and apparent throughout the phone call that he thought fraud was being done on him and on the election process, and he wanted this guy to rectify that. So you're never going to be able to prove that wasn't his intent. So that whole thing, gone. It's stupid, waste of time, will never go anywhere. But that's the next shoe to drop, and they're going to try to keep Trump mired in these sort of proceedings up until the election. I think that they're going to try to cut his campaign stops in half by making him appear as many times as they can in these court proceedings and shit, and then gum up his money, because a lot of his stuff is self-funded and so forth. And so, they're just throwing everything at him they can. And it only makes him stronger. His poll numbers are going up. They could actually fully like convict him and have him like ready to go off to jail, and he would probably still win the vote.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Um, for those people who want to, I let me preface this. I get why people don't like Donald Trump necessarily. I get it. His personality is grating, and he's a bully, and I abhor bullies, and that drives me crazy. It really does. Uh, However, regardless of what those same people, and I'm agreeing with the people who want to see him hung from a tree, um, I don't think that he's a bad human being. I don't think he has hatred in his heart. I just think that his personality sucks. But I don't vote for the president of the United States because I like his personality. I vote for the president of the United States because I think the person that I'm voting for, even if I choose to vote, which seems pointless anymore too, um, but even if I were to do that, um, I'm not voting for this isn't a popularity contest. This isn't for the homecoming queen and king at your fucking high school. Grow up, everybody. This is about the person who can run the country in a more efficient and better manner than the previous administration or their opponent or both. In this particular case, the facts are now in after 2 years of Biden. Trump literally is 1,000 times better a politician and negotiator than Joe Biden. Here's why. Joe Biden is the dumbest fucking human being that has ever held the office of the president of any nation anywhere on earth at any time in history. Period. He's an asshole. He is, from my perspective, he's a
Come on,
pedophile.
man.
He's a pedophile. He is a pathological liar. Joe Biden is not capable of telling the truth about everything,
Oh,
unless you believe that Joe Biden is a black, Jewish, Greek, Puerto Rican raised Catholic. If you believe that, who, by the way, took on the largest gang member in known North America named Corn Pop, and then let all the little kids play with his white floating blonde hair off his legs in the pool. If this is the guy that you think is a good person to be president, I got news for you. So
come
they
on,
did.
man. Actually, I had to take those showers with my daughter. How is she going to learn to wash herself
No.
appropriately? Next thing you know, Corn Pop rolls up. He wants to hit a piece, and she stinks. So, and I tell you what, you may think you're smarter, but I'm smarter than you. I know I'm smarter than you. I graduated with 3 degrees, top of my class. I had a full scholarship, and oh wait, all that's bullshit.
Yeah, right. Just like his uncle was a coal mining engineer, except no, his wasn't even an engineer. That his dad worked in the coal mine, except no, his dad didn't work in the coal mine. Oh, by the way, he's been caught plagiarizing. As a matter of fact, for those who don't know, in the 1980s, Joe Biden ran for president. And at that time, Peter Jennings, before he went completely fucking out of his mind and became the most woke piece of shit on planet Earth, Canadians are such morons. He called him out, and he's the one who did the investigation to prove that this guy was a lying ass piece of shit, then outed him on national television. Right. And now he votes for him. So, yeah, Joe Biden, come on, people, you got to be better than that. Jesus. And that's why
I don't get it.
this is why we're at where we're at in America right now. That if you think that these things are okay, and we're just touching on Biden's character as a human being. We're not even talking about all the rules, laws that he has broken in his family and how they've enriched themselves to the tune of a couple $100 million without any expertise in anything other than being Biden's. So, yeah, life is fun, and it'd be a whole lot more fun without those people in it. Fortunately, Joe Biden will be dead soon, and it will be a day to rejoice.
Yeah, fair enough. So with that, do you want to move into something else like
Oh yeah.
NFL or
Oh, they can go to the NFL if you want to.
have you seen this? And I didn't have a chance to pull it up, but maybe I would.
Well, let's first
Um,
off, we got to get so everybody should know. Not 2 weeks from today, we'll be doing our pre-NFL draft cast, and we will be making our first round predictions only. We will give you our scoring, and we are going to take on head to head with a scoring method to find out between us and the experts who can score the draft better. And that draft starts in 17 days, 22 hours, 16 minutes, and 12 seconds. So be ready.
So I was going to ask you if you had seen, and thanks for pitching that. But have you seen the little deal they did where they figured up which NFL team, if you took their fastest defensive back, fastest linebacker, fastest running back, and fastest wide receiver, and made a 4x1 track team out of them,
Who would be the
um,
fastest?
who would be the fastest? And they actually tried to, they had to look at 40s because nobody's running hundreds. So I mean, that's obviously a different
Right.
race, but you can extrapolate to some extent there. But I can't. I'm trying to find it. It was actually interesting, and the Chiefs, even without Tyreek, obviously the Dolphins were right in there too. Um, but man, I'm gonna have to find that. I can't find it right off the top here. But I just thought it was really interesting. Um, the Chiefs, though, they had to, one thing I was going to talk about, though. The Chiefs had to use Justin Ross, who's a wide receiver who's like never really seen any playing time. He's been injured most of his career, and he showed out at Clemson. Seemed like he was gonna be a stud, wide receiver in the league, and just been plagued by injury and hasn't been able to really get out on the field. But the Chiefs like hung around with him. We've kept him on IR and stuff like that because he's so lightning fast and he has such promise. But um, maybe this is his year. But that also makes me wonder, like, what do the Chiefs plan to do at wide receiver with McCole Hardman being gone and with Juju being gone now? But we did just pick up another guy, Richie James. I'm Rick James, bitch. Richie James from the Giants. So, and I think he had like, I want to say like 500 plus yards and like 4 or 5 touchdowns last season. Um, from Daniel Jones, so he should be able to double that in Kansas City, right? Every time I say Daniel Jones, I think Dr. Jones. But anyway, I don't know why. But anyway, so that guy's pretty good. That'll help a little bit. I think we're gonna be okay in that regard, but it's almost like maybe they're planning on Justin Ross stepping up and being a thing. And holy cow, man, that would be super cool for him if that would be the case. So
I think the draft's going to be interesting. It's not exactly as crazy loaded on the top end as you would be normally um, with quarterbacks or at least with quarterbacks with the crazy name recognition. I think Bryce Young out of Alabama or CJ Stroud are probably the two best options there. And I think that they'll probably go in the top 3 picks, 4 picks, because teams are so desperate for quarterbacks in the NFL. Um, because they're in the NFL, there are only 10 or 12 absolute legitimate quarterbacks that can take your team to the Super Bowl, and that's it.
right,
Um, and everybody else is looking for one. And out of those 10 or 12 quarterbacks, um, 10 of them are in the AFC. So there are teams that are going to be looking. The Panthers have the first pick. So my guess is they're going to go with CJ Stroud. Nothing against Bryce Young, but CJ's a bit bigger, has a stronger arm, and he has more experience. And I think that's the reason that they're going to go with him. Um, but it's up in the air. I mean, as far as the Jags go, I'm hoping Joey Porter Jr. From Penn State is still available at the 24th pick at cornerback. I think I don't think he's the number one corner. I think he's probably 2 or 3, but I don't think that he'll be available um, at the 24th pick. And so Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon is probably the number one corner from my estimation. Devon Weatherspoon would be right there. Cam Smith is probably close, and Joey Porter. All 4 of those guys, I would take Cam Smith or Joey Porter. But it just depends on how many corners go off the board. I'm hoping at least that's where Jags are going to be gone. Either that or go offensive tackle, although they did pick up 2 offensive tackles in free agency to um, try to curve some of those concerns there. And guys with real, who have started for long periods of times. His name's escaping off the top of my head, but he used to play for the Jags and then went and protected Tom Brady's blind side for the last 5 seasons, and now he just re-signed back with the Jags, so he even knows the organization. So we'll see. I haven't done my full first round report, but depending upon how I think things will fall down. But if I was the Jags general manager or head coach, if I was Doug Peterson, offensively they're in pretty good shape. Defensively is where they need a little more help. I think, particularly in coverage. They have a fine defensive line and good linebackers, especially Walker. So I would go corner, but we'll see what they do.
And if I was the Chiefs, GM or something like that, I think I would try to trade in a bunch of picks and move up for Quentin Johnston and give Pat Mahomes another weapon because he's a stud rookie receiver out of TCU, and it'd be a lot of fun to put him as a big receiver. We have a lot of smaller, speedy guys, and it'd be nice to have a 6'4" guy like Quentin, but I don't see that happening. The Chiefs probably going to draft an edge rusher, or in the first round, or a offensive lineman, I would imagine. So
yeah, I would think for you guys, especially offensive line, you took a big loss on that side. I know you picked up players in free agency so far to help plug that in, but Thomas is a whole different kind of player, and to bring somebody young and that has real talent at that's a problem. That's a nice thing for at least for Kansas City. To me, unless you're going to trade up, the best edge rushers. So the way the draft has been working recently is it's quarterbacks, edge rushers, outside linebackers, and wide receivers and corners are all at the front end because they make immediate impacts in huge ways very quickly in the NFL and can literally, if you're a team that's a wide receiver away and you get the right guy in the draft, it can change everything for you, for instance. Linemen, where Kansas City drafts at, which is at the bottom or near at the bottom of the first round, it opens a lot of those players are filtering back through, and there is a lot of good offensive linemen coming in this year. So they're going to be in a good position because they could pick some of the other stuff they want up in later rounds, I would think, because the top edge rusher guys that you're referring to, they'll be gone by the time you get to 32. And if you do some creative stuff in the second round, you can get just as good an edge rusher at pick, say, 58 as you can at 32.
Right. Yeah. And the Chiefs seem to do a good job at those later rounds too.
They do. That's it. That's Andy Reid, right? I mean,
Brett
Andy
Veach.
is one, right. But I mean, that's a great thing about great organizations. And in this particular case, we're talking about Kansas City, is that the general manager in the front office and the coaching staff are like this, right?
Yes.
They get it and they work with each other very, very well. It cannot be understated, Andy Reid's ability to spot talent. He's remarkable at it. He was remarkable in Philadelphia. A lot of people forget Andy Reid took over in Philadelphia in the late 1990s. So we're talking of a span of 25 years. He didn't have a losing season in 25 friggin' years. He's been a head coach for 25 years. Guy's never had a losing season. I mean, what more do you want from your head coach? And what more evidence do you need that he actually knows what he's doing on every aspect of the game that is required from a head coach? Because in an NFL organization, the owner is the top dog. The head coach is oftentimes the next guy on that list. He's that important to the franchise. And I think owners that take it that seriously, like Robert Kraft, or Jack Kent Cooke when he owned the Redskins and he had Joe Gibbs. The Rooneys with from Chuck Noll to Bill Cowher to Mike Tomlin, 3 coaches since 1965 or whatever. I mean, they get it because the formula works. And Kansas City really has that grind in at a NFL Hall of Fame kind of level for their organization right now. And I mean, Kansas City is still going to be a dangerous football team for as long as Andy wants to coach and as long as Pat can remain healthy. And as much as Pat Mahomes is one of those outlier guys who is so good, and he is literally talked about so often for so long in season and off season that it feels like he's been playing in the NFL for like 20 years already. It's been 5. So he's got a long way to go.
Well, and Andy Reid's not going anywhere either. And here's the thing, um, Andy's concurred about this too. That one thing that's going to help keep Andy around for a long time to come is that his workload has been dramatically reduced. And when you talk about the talent scouting stuff, Veach is so trusted by Andy that the GM Brett Veach, he and his team handle all that, and then he sends like if there's sort of like a tie or like there's like 3 players that are fairly equivalent, or if it's something that he feels like he needs to double check with coach on, he'll send him the files, on these guys. But for the most part, once they get their draft board set up, or they get guys that they're interested in set up, they send it to coach just to get the final blessing. But Reed has been like, dude, just turned it right over because he's like, you guys got it. You know what I want, you know what I like, and you're really good at finding it. So by all means, have at it. And that takes a lot of that pressure off of Reed.
Well, of
You can
course.
just think about the offense.
But it's also indicative of people who run an organization top down
Delegate.
pick right and know how to delegate that authority correctly. Because you can't
Mm-hmm.
do everything yourself. And if you think you're going to do everything yourself, well, you're going to fail because it's just, especially in today's NFL, it's way too overly complicated. Here's a little thing. So we've been talking about Aaron Rodgers a bit. If Aaron Rodgers ends up going to the New York Jets, let's say that trade is pending, and I would say that it still is. And if I was going to bet, he's going to the Jets. It'll happen before June 1st. All right. And so, but the Jets also have already signed and picked up Alan Lazard, Amercole Hartman. Then on top of that, they got safety Chuck Clark, who's an all pro center, Wes Schweitzer, and they picked up one of the best punters in the entire game, Thomas Morset. So, and then they re-signed their all-pro linebacker Quincy Williams on top of that. This
Offensive,
team,
offensive and defensive rookies of the year.
yeah, and then they get look. Aaron Rodgers just needs to show up and play good football. And I mean, they will if they get Aaron Rodgers. They're going to be much better than the Packers are, and I think it would be fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
We now have the oldest gun in the NFL because Brady's not coming back, so the oldest gun in the NFL, and legitimately, just statistically, and just from the eye test, right? I don't think anybody can deny that Aaron Rodgers is absolutely probably the most gifted quarterback that ever played in the NFL. Only other guy that I would lean that nod towards would be Dan Marino, who I think is probably the physically most gifted guy in terms of all the mechanics of the game. Um, and then he's going to be able to compete against Josh Allen and Jackson, and of course Pat Mahomes, who's the best quarterback in the NFL, and Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. My God, man, that's going to make that stuff even more fun. And then they have Mac Jones has been playing just fine for the Patriots, and they'll be in the same division along with Josh Allen. Holy moly, man. It's going to be the NFL season is going to be a lot of fun this year. And I'm looking forward to it. Another thing that I wanted to touch base on too is so now word is insider word from all my inside guys, which there are none. Um, so the scuttlebutt is that before the owners' meeting on May 22nd, the Commanders will be sold. And it's so that if there's a pending sale at the next owners' meeting, that they can take a vote on whether or not to approve the sale. Because the owners in the NFL only get together once a quarter. These are billionaires. They don't have time to get together whenever they feel like it, right? So they're only going to get together once a quarter. So it'll be 3 more months until they even get together again. So they put out the edict that they want this done. Right now, the leading edge on everything is the group that includes Magic Johnson. But as it turns out, again, insider is that Jeff Bezos is simply waiting to see what the max bid is, and then he's just going to come in. He's going to add money that nobody can match, and he's going to overpay, but he doesn't care because he has the money, and he's just going to buy the Commanders outright. Then another interesting tidbit on top of that is word from inside of the franchise itself and the communications that they've had with the prospective groups who want to buy it is that, and thank God for all of the Commanders' current fans, is they're going to get rid of the stupidest name in pro football history, the Commanders, and rebrand it themselves so that they can make the whole Dan Snyder era disappear. And I think that would be smart, actually.
Yeah.
Just go to get I still think Red Wolves was the absolute best way to go, especially since the red wolf is the most endangered wolf in all of the world, and it is indigenous to Virginia and the Carolinas particularly, and that's just the perfect name for them. And I think that's what they should have gone with to begin with.
They could totally babyface too and give like $1 of every jersey sell to like, bring
Right.
back the Red Wolves or like,
That's right.
dude, it's so easy. Like there's nowhere to go but up from Dan Snyder.
Absolutely. Do you know? So here's some interesting facts about the once proud Washington Redskins, now the Dan Snyders. They were had the longest waiting list for season tickets in the NFL, and that was true from 1969 until he bought the team. Last year, as of the numbers that came out last month, the lowest percentage of sales for seats in the stadium over the last 3 NFL seasons has been the Commanders.
Way to go, Dan.
Yeah,
Way to go.
he took a team that sold out every single home game for 2 generations and turned them in to the easiest place to get tickets in the entire NFL. So anybody who comes in, everything is upside for them. Every partner that won't work with Dan Snyder in the Maryland, Virginia area, which is all of them, will now be open to working with the new one. The name Commanders is just absurd. Nobody liked it to begin with, except for Dan Snyder, apparently. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But it should be a lot of fun. But it's going to be a lot of weird shit going on because even if they come in and get approved on May the 22nd, that's not enough time to rebrand your team for this season. So what do they do? And if you look at what they've done in free agency, if Sam Howell really is a good quarterback the way he finished the season for them, their defense last year was 7th overall and 3rd in total yards given up. And they're loaded with offensive weapons. They're a really dangerous football team. The NFC East is going to be dangerous as hell next year. The Giants are good. Nobody had a losing record last year. And all of them are playoff quality rosters. We'll see how it all shakes out, but it's going to be very interesting. I think there are just certain divisions in football, like the AFC West or the NFC East, that when those divisions are optimal, playing optimal football, when all of their teams are playing at a very high rate, the NFL itself overall benefits from that activity. And I think that that's been true my entire life. And I think it'll remain that way. I think that if I was going to add 2 more into there, I think the NFC East and the AFC West are number one and number two, or 1A and 1B, however you want to say it. They're the top dogs. But then after that, it would be the what used to be called the AFC Norris division by Chris Berman with Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Cincy, and Baltimore. And then the AFC East, actually, because when the Patriots, the Dolphins, the Jets, and Buffalo, if they're all good football teams, people pay more attention to the NFL. Those four divisions right there, if two of the four are doing great, then the NFL is probably doing good. If all four of them are kicking some butt, and I think all four of them are going to be doing that this year, the NFL is going to be really, really interesting. And I think it's going to create a lot of drama and a lot of really great football games, which is the whole point of the NFL to begin with.
True story. And so, like, I have a prediction that Brock Purdy is going to actually beat Lance out.
I'll take that bet.
All right. And so I guess we won't know by the time you're here in June for you to buy me a
No,
beer when I win, but we'll know by will we know by late August?
we probably
No.
should. We should, because the NFL will start about 10 days afterwards. The things will already be worked out. There's no way San Francisco, because Mike Shanahan is one of the top 3 or 4 NFL coaches currently in the NFL.
Mhm.
He's not going to let his team struggle and have to guess until the first game of the year who's going to be the starting quarterback.
All right. So when they announce that it's Purdy, you can buy me a beer in Jacksonville. How about
We can do that. You can absolutely buy me a beer in Jacksonville. I got no problems with that.
that?
I think the upside for Lance is just better. And Lance was actually playing well, but he just got injured so early on. And they all competed against each other last year, Garoppolo, Brock, and him. So, and he won out, clearly won out. I don't see why that would change. He's faster, stronger, and has a better arm. Whether he can manage the game, well,
See,
we're going to have to wait and see.
I think that all San Francisco needs is somebody to manage the game the way Purdy can do it because they have so many superstars
Well, I think one of
that
the interesting things about Brock is what shocked everyone was how sound a professional he was. Not that he threw a high completion percentage, or that he threw no interceptions and almost all touchdowns with like one pick, or that his Q rating was really high. I think what shocked people more than anything else was how mature and composed he was, how well he checked down for a rookie, last guy taken in the NFL draft. He did a remarkable job. So he has a moxie
Mhm.
under center that can't be taught. You either
Yeah.
have that or you do not. That's why Green Bay's going to eat shit, because Jordan Love doesn't have that.
Mm-mm. He's
No,
not. He's not the
no,
dog. He's not the
no.
dog, man. He just ain't the dog.
Because
So
Aaron's gone and Jordan Love's going to shit the bed. He's been there a long time. They've given him opportunities. He's played some games and he's looked like absolute dog shit every time he's been in a game.
well, then my other sort of idea about predicting something we could buy a beer for each other over one or the other. Uh, where do you think Lamar Jackson's going to end up?
That's a good one. I really thought that somebody would have already taken care of that. If Jackson's going to move, it's going to be on the first day of the NFL draft.
Mhm.
If somebody's going to step up, I don't think that they're going to want him around. Um, to be perfectly honest, and most people will probably think I'm crazy. He went to West Virginia University. He was born and raised in Maryland. He grew up a Redskins fan when he was a kid, and they have everything they need to make that trade. They do. They have a shit ton of money. They are not in cap hell or even remotely close to it, and they have more than their fair share of draft picks. I think that, man, if they picked up Jackson, the Washington football team, they're a legit Super Bowl contender the second they get him. Period. I think they're crazy if they don't go all in and try to pick him up, because they have not had a legitimate franchise quarterback. And that to me is defined as somebody who quarterbacks your team for a long periods of time and you win with them, not a couple of years and then they get injured. Since Joe Theismann was knocked out of the NFL in 1984. It's been that long.
Yeah. Well, and it's man, you really botched this if you're Baltimore. Um, Now, granted, a big hurdle has been the fact that Lamar doesn't have representation. It's him and his mom,
Yeah,
and
that's that
you
that and
don't
that to me
have.
is probably a mistake.
It's a big mistake because you don't have a layer between you and the person you're negotiating with. So when they scoff at a number, you take that shit personal. But if you have this intermediary, they can take it personal for you. You don't have to take it that way, and they can scoff back and they can go, "Well, I can tell you what you're saying isn't going to make my client happy either. So you better come up with something different." And then you go back with that different thing, and the client never had to hear about the shitty thing that they offered up front that was like kind of demeaning or demoralizing. And so it's a much easier negotiation.
Well,
Plus the fucking agents know what they're doing. They understand the ins and the outs, and they can go back to the person and explain, yeah, okay, you're not getting 230 guaranteed, but if you sign this contract, you're actually guaranteed to get more in the long run.
right. Like for
You
instance,
know,
don't hire your mom to be your surgeon for the injuries that you get in the NFL if your mother hasn't actually been a surgeon her whole life.
yeah.
So you make a very salient point, and 100%. One of the greatest things that agents do, and let's be clear, agents are lawyers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're very versed in contract law. And one of the things that they're also very versed and very adept at doing is never allowing the things that would probably upset the athlete themselves, either A, be known, or without good explanation as to why that shouldn't bother you, right? You could take something personal that's not personal. Like, for instance, if you think they're lowballing you, but you find out after you get the conversation, you heard the number that you're lowballed and now you're taking that personally. Well, a good agent can go, look, I know that you think that that's a low number. I know that you think that you should get 250 million, but they're going to give you 180 million, which you think is a joke, but it's 100% guaranteed. That's a conversation you should be having because a $250 million contract only guaranteed for 120 isn't nearly as good as 180 million guaranteed because your contract's only as good as your guarantee. The rest of it's bullshit anyway. But a good agent knows how to walk you through those things, make you understand how that's going to work and what is actually in your best interest. Whereas your mom's looking out for her little boy. That's a different kind of negotiating and probably a really terrible negotiating. And that's why everything broke down last year. And I think, sadly, that's the reason that Baltimore is willing to cut bait with all of this because they'll sign this contract with him now. He'll get somewhere near the guarantee he's looking for. And then 4 or 5 years later, they got to deal with his fucking mommy all over again, and they don't want to. And I don't fucking blame them. I just don't. Sometimes it's just not worth, right? Sometimes it's just not worth the hassle.
I just see her in the room negotiating like Tommy Boy, like like
No,
she's
the water
Chris
boy's mom.
Farley. No, like Tommy Boy, like Chris Farley from Tommy Boy, where he's negotiating with the people for the parts, and he's like, "I guarantee you can get a good look at a steak if you stick your head in the butcher's ass, but what good is a guarantee?"
No, Tommy Boy's mom. Tommy Boy's mom, where
Water Boy's mom. Water Boy's
the
mom.
water boy's mom. We're willing to offer your son a $200 million guaranteed $200 million contract. They're the devil.
Foosball is the devil.
It's the devil.
Well, ma'am, what part of the snake would you think we're eating right now? Well, snakes don't really have parts, but I reckon if it was going to be a part, it would probably be his knee. Okay.
Medulla oblongata.
It's your medulla oblongata.
You cannot have your mom negotiating. And you know when I heard that last year, I actually thought it was a joke. I thought it was a spoof, right? Like, dude, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, and your mom who didn't graduate high school is the person who is doing your negotiating?
Yeah, next she's going to be your I mean, you might as well have her be your strength trainer and your dietitian and your
Oh my God.
pliability
That's why I said,
expert. And
oh, you busted your knee up. Why don't you have your mom do the surgery,
yeah, let her do a
dumbass?
little cleanup surgery for you.
It's a shame too because um, he hurt himself playing
Big
last year
time. Yeah.
because he got hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's the third year in a row he's been hurt and missed games,
Doesn't
and
look
he
good.
did it. Imagine we know how all this works, right? So we're talking a fraction of where he was hit or how that knee twisted is a difference between a blown out knee with torn ACL and missing an entire NFL season or missing 3 or 4 games.
Right.
And he really risked that with no money. That would have been coming his way. And if it would have been with today's technology, I don't even think they can get that bad anymore, and you'll still be able to play, but at the same level, who knows? And that was a risk he was willing to take. I would tell I could tell right now that I'm a much better agent than his mother is because I never in a million years would have allowed him to take that risk. No way. I would have just sat out the whole year and stayed healthy. Fuck it. All right. We'll just wait till next year then.
I would say, Mom, I love you, but I'm not going to allow you to be my agent in anything really, because like that's not what you do. But you wouldn't want to because you would know that that's not your lane.
Yeah, well, here's the deal too. If him and his mother have this kind of weird sycophantic relationship, it's no wonder he's not married because nobody wants to marry mama's boy, right? I mean, what the
Right.
hell,
There's
man?
some boundaries there, buddy.
Jesus
She's still
Christ.
picking out your clothes, setting out your uniform
You
before the
remember,
game.
do you remember those Campbell Soup commercials with Donovan McNabb where his mom would run out the football field with his soup? Well, here's
Bro, LJ took that shit serious.
his mom comes onto the football field with fucking soup. It's fucking horrible.
Lamar Jackson saw that when he was a kid. He just thought that's what you
Yeah.
do.
Oh, cool. My mom's on the field. Oh my God. Yeah, it's a bad look for him for sure. But all
Yeah.
joking aside, he's top 10 NFL quarterback.
He's a
That's all there
stud.
is to that tune.
He's a stud.
And
Yeah.
if he gets on a team that can surround him and protect him a little bit better, and he can be smarter. One of the problems that I always have with the high level athlete playing quarterback that we have today, and I mean the athleticism of quarterbacks in today's NFL are drastically different than what was considered the golden era of quarterbacking, which would have been the 80s and the 90s from that just stellar 1983 draft, right? Where I think everybody picked a quarterback in the first round. They all went to the Hall of Fame except for Kansas City because they took Blackman from Penn State.
Todd Blackledge, yeah.
He just didn't get there. But there were so many great guys that came out of it. But these were all pocket passer guys with rocket arms and just field general stuff. Like they were Peyton Manning in that era, right? But there was a bunch of them, not one. Today's NFL is dominated by guys that could otherwise be playing wide receiver or cornerback. They're that athletically gifted. But the problem is they're so athletically gifted that oftentimes they can't help themselves from using their legs far, far, far more often than is necessary. And they end up getting beat down too quickly and their careers cut short. And I think what's interesting about Pat is he has sustained no major injuries.
He almost wants to throw, baby.
But he always looks to throw first, not run. And his team is so adept at buying time around him. The discipline, that's another thing too that people fail to realize with a guy like any of these guys, Mahomes in this particular conversation, is that the discipline in his offensive line not to creep downfield and create penalties when he's running around back there like a maniac. I mean, these guys are counting oftentimes in their head like you and I do when we're in bands, right? You got to keep that count going. You got to know because you know that things are on timing. Well, if the play should take no longer than 3 seconds to 3.5 seconds for your quarterback to get rid of the ball, it's very difficult to make sure you're maintaining your position for 6 and 7 seconds while he's running around like a maniac, right? But they do it so well, and that's one of the aspects of football that gets lost on a lot of people who who just aren't into the game. They're more peripheral fans than they are, inside the game kind of people. And that's also what helps Pat Mahomes be as dynamic and as great as he is, because his offensive line is remarkably disciplined and manages to always stay the route. You rarely during the season do you ever see an offensive lineman being called for an illegal receiver downfield on a Kansas City football team. You just don't see it. It happens, but like maybe once or twice a year when your quarterback does this 75% of the time when he drops back.
Yeah,
It is really remarkable that they have that discipline.
they work on it a lot because they have to because of the style of the QB. But well,
And
buddy, with that, what's that?
and one word I just wanted to add that we'll see how it goes moving forward. But for sure, the Eagles' offensive line did a hell of a lot for Jalen Hurts like that last year because, man, they were, I'm going to say it last time, I'm going to say it. Jalen Hurts is totally legit, and the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be great for a long time. And if it's Philadelphia and Kansas City in the Super Bowl again, I wouldn't even be even a little bit surprised.
No, I'm predicting it actually. So yeah, I just gave you my Super Bowl prediction for the coming season.
I'm not there yet because I don't know what's going to happen.
Which was actually my prediction for this past season and the season before. So.
I did. So I predicted Kansas City would go to the Super Bowl, which I've done for the last 5 years because it's just the easy pick on the AFC side. I didn't see it coming with Philadelphia, although I thought they'd be a player. I really thought it was going to be either San Francisco or Green Bay. Green Bay was my pick. But boy, that something Lindbergh cheese stinky is going on in Green Bay, where they just for a couple of years now have not been able to really make everything work, even though they had the pieces to do it. I don't know.
They've been trying to edge Rodgers out. They want to move on. They want to do it before it's late, like they did with Favre, and they've been kind of hoping that would just work its way out, and it just didn't. It just he showed up and did 2 MVP seasons back to back. What are you gonna do? They didn't expect that shit.
The irony of that whole thing is that's exactly what Brett Favre did too, right?
I know.
Could you imagine your organization? And they've been wanting Jordan Love, and I think the difference is Jordan Love is not going to be Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers was Brett Favre, right? The only difference between the Rodgers and Favre, and the reason I would take Favre, is because I don't think I've ever watched a player in the NFL ever have more fun and love for a sport than Brett Favre had for playing football. This guy was just the funnest football player I ever had the pleasure to watch play football. How many quarterbacks make an amazing play, throw a 60-yard touchdown, and the first guy all the way down in the end zone, hoisting that guy up in the air as a quarterback, and just threw him the ball from 60 yards away? And Favre did that kind of stuff routinely, man. He was all about it. And Rodgers, while I think physically is far more skilled, doesn't have that kind of personality. Not saying that he just doesn't. That's all. And I just prefer the Favre personality. That comes down to that. But if you could start a franchise right now with either one of those in their first year, you're not going wrong either way. It doesn't matter.
No doubt, bro. Well, we are creeping up on an hour and 20 here. Would you like to wrap things up, or do you have any extra thoughts?
All right. So we'll do our little wrap up. I am sick and tired of men pretending they're women. And what I'm even more sick and tired of is women pretending they're women too. Women are amazing and incredible, and I love them. And they should be unique unto themselves. And if the Dylan Mulvaney's and the other transgendered people, then they should just be considered transgender if that's the way they want to go. But you don't get to pretend you're a real woman. If you actually have male genitalia, you do not get to experience what women go through. It is an absurdity, and that works in both directions. Number 2, thank you, Democrat Party. Donald Trump's going to be the next president. You're a bunch of fucking idiots. And number 3, I love the NFL, and I can't wait for football season.
Well, you said it all with that, brother. I second all that, and I'll just say that the draft is coming up in what, 18
17
days,
days.
17 days.
Hang on, hang on, hang on. I got my counter. 17
Oh
days,
yeah, yeah.
22 hours, 16 minutes, and 7 seconds.
6, 5, 4. So anyway, we were counting down, and we were excited to see how that all shakes out. They're gonna have the draft back in my hometown area in Kansas City, and I'm excited to see how all that shakes out. And we will be coming at you right before that with our predictions of how we think things will shake out in the first round, and then we'll get to see how. Well, the following week we'll do a follow up and see how far off we were, or if we
Right.
do,
It'll
maybe
be
we
fun.
do like we did last time you and I did it, and we beat all of the talking heads and the supposed experts at predicting it, like
That's right. And
far
that's
and away beat them.
so that'll be fun for everybody because we'll put it out. We'll even put it on screen. We'll
Mm-hmm.
show you how the scoring process goes, and it's very fair. We've done this before, and we are going to go against all your favorites from Mel Kipper to um, yeah, I don't even remember their names because they all suck. But
They do.
Adam Schefter, and I mean they all do it anymore, right? They all do their thing.
Mm.
Chris Mortensen, they all put out a thing. I mean, some are a little more well known than others. The guys from the NFL Network who do it,
Peter Schrager and all
right?
those guys,
Yep.
and
Zimmerman
yeah,
from Sports Illustrated. So we'll pick who we think are probably like
Jay Glazer and like
right.
all
So
those
like maybe the
douchebags.
top five guys out of that, add Chad and I into it. We'll post our point system and we'll see how that whole thing shakes out. And by the way, the reason that we do that, and I'll keep this short, is to show that with all their bluster and all their shit, that at the end of the day, two guys who just happen to love a sport and follow it can do as good, if not a better job than the guys who are literally paid millions of dollars a year to do it. Because that's exactly what we did the last time, and that's exactly what we're going to do again.
Yepers. So, with that, everybody, thanks for tuning in again to another Mancast. Stay on the lookout for another one to drop soon, and we appreciate y'all once again. See you next time.